Emily, Lunasita. We can't see you, but I'm glad you're here. Hi, Chad. Oh, this is great. Ima Mama Rina.
Well, I hope all of yours week went well. I will get to hear a little bit more about how it went, but just welcoming you all back. Our theme for today is creativity and play, which sounds like a great idea to me. So get ready to get creative and play.
Well, welcome everyone. Nice to see your faces. So glad we're all here together. There was a song that I was thinking about after we completed our session last time. So I'm going to share that with you this time because it's related to embodiment and what feels like us embracing this awareness of letting the medicines kind of move through us for our own healing, our curing, and our receptivity in our own bodies. So I would like to open with a song for all of us, and you're welcome to just listen and or sing along on your own if you'd like. It's pretty easy to follow the chorus. Might need to do that.
I did it.
Okay, thank you. We are already healed. We are already whole. May we be the prayer that we are. It is already done. We have already won. May we be the prayer that we are. It is already done. We are already won. May we be the prayer that we are. Sending blessings for this group of us as a collective being, honoring our own prayers, honoring our bodies, the physical embodiment that we have to embody the soul, the spirit. May we continue to create more opportunities for awareness, to recognize the temple of our soul and treat it with kindness, with love, to find freedom, to continue receiving and continue knowing the body and the soul. So much gratitude as we welcome each other into the space. Aho.
Aho.
So on that note, we wanted to check in and see how this last week with embodiment went, and kind of starting with the idea of what you're noticing as you're becoming more aware of your body. And part of our practice was also looking at certain types of self-love and appreciation and gratitude practices. So just curious if anyone started to bring certain practices into their lives to help them feel better in their body, and or what they're noticing, what you're noticing as you become more aware of your body. If anything's up for anyone in particular, please feel free to share. Yeah, Rena. You might need to unmute yourself, I think. Yep.
Okay. Oh, now I can hear myself.
Yeah.
That's not so good. Oh, this is cool. It's like eating me. Okay, I'll just talk. The first day home from coming from Guatemala, I went and sat in a regular chair, had my regular coffee. Thank you, that's much better. Had my regular coffee, sat down with my list, started making my list for the day, got up, started doing everything on the list, and all of a sudden I went, whoa, what just happened? So I stopped what I was doing, stepped over all the laundry, and went and created my altar and sat with it for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was like such a big catch, because the other was so habitual and rote, you know, just like, this is what I do when I get home from a trip. And it was a big moment for me of, whoa, stop what you're doing and think about what you're doing. So I got my 20 minutes with my altar, and it was amazing, and I loved it. And the rest of the day was much more conscious. I did all my stuff, but it was different. It was not just habitual. It was great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Isn't it amazing how much difference 20 minutes can make?
Amazing. And just stopping the like hamster circle, you know, just wait a minute, get off that thing for a minute and do this other thing and see what happens. And it was really beautiful. So thank you guys.
Yeah. Great example of awareness.
There's a quote I like, which is to meditate every day for 10 minutes. And if you don't have time, then meditate for 30 minutes.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. And I love my altar, and I I look forward to spending time with it
Mhm.
and letting it kind of change. Right now, it's just everything thrown on there, and I'm like, okay, let's see what it wants to do. I want to hold the stone, like you said last week.
Mhm.
Uh, so anyway, thank you, thank you.
Yeah. We often think of them as living altars because they are evolving and adapting as we do.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyone else? Maybe time for one more share. Somebody that is feeling the effects of embodiment or this awareness and maybe how it's changed the way you think about or speak to yourself or your moods or anything that has been noticeable this week. Yeah, Claudia, thanks.
Okay, now the microphone, I hope is on.
Good.
There are a lot of things which changed. The first thing is that people I meet now, since I'm back in Austria, everybody recognizes that I changed to the positive so much, that I seem empowered and stronger and happier, and everybody recognizes it. So it's quite amazing for me to hear that and to get that feedback. And the other thing is also by myself, because the weather in Austria is pretty nasty right now. It's winter, it's rainy, it's dark, and so on. And it always pulled me down, my mood, my spirit. And now I can go on the streets and think, hey, I am the sun. I don't care what the weather is. I'm shining, I'm glowing. It's me. And so yeah, that's totally new for me. And I was also, just stop me if I talk too long. Since you talked last time about finding a stone, kuya, my kuya. I was thinking, okay, do I buy a crystal somewhere or do I look for a stone? And then where do I look for a stone on where I make my walks or a special place? And so I was also like meditating about, because I wanted to be something special, and so I thought, now I go to a river. It's called Danube. It's a very big river who runs through whole Europe and runs through 10 countries, connects 10 countries, and ends up in the Black Sea in Romania. And yeah, I drove there and walked there, and first I thought maybe there, if I look around, it was also raining. Already there, I see a stone who is like sort of talking to me, but that didn't happen. So I just started collecting many stones. And thought, yeah, I check it out at home if there is a special stone what I'm looking for. And it was there. It's very little. You might not see it. And I don't know if you can see what I'm talking about, because the stone is very light, and up to 2/3 there is a dark spot or mark.
Right.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I thought, this is, since I think probably about 2/3 of my life are already over, which is fine with me. But the last third, I definitely want to spend without the dark part of my life, without the tragedies or without dark things, whatever it is. So at home, I was really happy. I found it right away, and I knew with all the stones, this little thing is it. And I have a nice little bag which I brought from Guatemala. So this tiny stone I always carry with me, and yeah, I'm so happy that it symbolizes me also the river, the Danube, moving forward, not looking back, or maybe looking back but not moving backward, moving forward. And so yes, it makes me pretty happy, and I feel pretty good about all these things going on. I mean, there are a lot more things going on, but it's not my turn to talk forever here. But yeah, very, very good week. Even that a lot of things are going on, not everything good, but I feel good. Even whatever happens around me, I never felt so stable and so secure. And hey, everything, like Ananda always said to me, just think everything is fine, everything is all right like it is now, whatever's going on. So yeah, so I'm happy. Thank you.
Yay.
You
Thank you.
guys. Okay.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. Beautiful stone too. Thank you for sharing that with the darkness and the light. It's perfect.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
especially yes.
Mhm. Hmm. Beautiful. Yay. How about anything mood-wise in our daily mood trackers? If anyone is tracking how they've been adapting or adjusting in their moods, again, still related perhaps to your what is coming up in your awareness and how that's being embodied, but when we're embodying, it's not just in our physical realm, as we talked about last week, it also navigates and then into our emotional, mental realm, and then ultimately to our spiritual realm. So really anything that you might be tracking in your daily mood tracker or otherwise. Yeah, Chad, you want to jump in?
Yeah, one of the things that I am tracking and noticing, and it's been interesting just to have a little bit more permission to kind of explore that and exploring the Hucha qualities of, like, I'm a therapist. I'm quite busy. I'm just relating to it and seeing periods of where there's kind of distinct periods of like overwhelm, and then just trying to relate to it in a way of like, I'm not necessarily tired or worn out, or my cognitive brain isn't necessarily worn out. There's part of this where it's like taking on too much energy in a specific period of time. And being able to relate, being like, okay, I need to let go of the things that aren't mine, consciously doing that, changing my clothes after work, going out for a walk, engaging with a little mapacho here and there, and things like that. It's been really, really nice. Just it's taken the load off. Like here I'm at Friday, usually I'm like pretty exhausted and just like I need to isolate for the next 36 hours in order to feel myself again, and I don't want to keep doing that. I want to have the energy and space to do things that are more creative and fun. So that's been helpful. Yeah, and then the other part of it, just tracking just increased periods of feeling totally fine and coherent, and being in connection with the medicine in a more subtle way, and like kind of the part of me that has had a really kind of intense longing, and sort of being in Guatemala for a period of time, coming back, sort of as existential crisis about like, do I want to be living in the world, or do I want to devote all my time and energy to spiritual practice? It's been a theme in my life for a long time, but it's more like, okay, it's fine to just settle in, see my own work as sacred. I'm doing healing work with people, seeing the sacredness and things like that, and bringing that view into my work is also lighten the load. So yeah, there's more periods of just feeling like everything's fine. There's still things that I have to do, tasks that I have to accomplish, obviously, goals to work towards and all that, but there's just a settling of the intensity of all of it. And yeah, so anyway, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Great share. Thank you so
Mhm.
much for that. Love the shifts in your conscious behaviors.
Mhm.
Yeah, choosing to make that conscious transition between work and non-work, and eventually seeing where they do meld and where they start to intertwine, so that it's not one or the other, but that they kind of become become one, which it sounds like is what you're going for. So doing a good job. Yay.
I just wanted to share quickly that, we've had 3 very positive, beautiful shares. If you're sitting there and perhaps feeling something more dense or more challenging that you're working through, don't feel shy or timid to share that as well. Sometimes after hearing a lot of positivity, it can feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be
Mm.
sharing something more challenging, but just knowing that everything is very welcome here.
Yeah, Emily.
So yeah, I've been noticing my inner critic, my inner skeptic, being present. Like, do I really feel this? Is there really something happening? And so some of the things I've been noticing um, are feeling really protective of my space, and not really wanting to be around other people. And so I'm not sure what that's all about, but I'm working through it. But there's definitely, I mean, I've got a pretty strong inner critic and skeptic, and they're raising their hands for sure.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you, Emily. I think sometimes the medicine just gives us, the permission to back off a little bit. And then it's up to us to say yes to that and to trust that we don't need to be engaged in everything with everyone at this time, that this is more of a personal journey. So that feels really appropriate. And I think, part of our work in this is quieting the mind enough to really listen to and then trust the intuition. On that note, Sahar, who was with us in this group, she just sent me a message and she was like, I'm not sure why, but I keep feeling like I'm not ready to take the medicine. I feel like my body keeps giving me these signals as to not start yet. And so I'm like, just listen to your intuition, just trust, maybe your time will come soon. And then she just sent me a message yesterday that she found out she was pregnant.
Mm.
So yeah, so listen to that inner voice,
Mhm.
whether it feels like a critic or a judgment or, try not to put that label on it, but just accept it as part of what the medicine is perhaps trying to show you. And even if you don't get a clear message, really just being willing to sit with it and know that you can be present for what is ready for you. Yeah.
And it reminds me of what we're going into today with creativity and play, that it's good to give ourselves time, space, like alone time to tap into that. So it's then noticing if there is like, oh, I don't want to be around people so much, then what is a way to tap in and utilize that, that time alone. And this is where magic can unfold, is to have that space. So it's just like a reframe for you of like, you naturally wanting to pull back and have that space, and that there can be something really beautiful within that space versus the opposite, like,
Mhm. And that's the best sweatshirt ever that you're wearing right now, Emily. So great.
Did anyone have a chance to do a period of dieta work this week? No dieteros yet. Okay. I will keep asking every week until.
Till somebody does it.
Did Stephanie just unmute herself?
I did, yeah. Sorry, I'm driving, so it's a little technologically tricky. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Kobe it was a true dieta, but it was like, I call it more of a Stephanie mashup, but it was equally, I think, effective. So it was more like a plant bath with juicing, with a Ananda chakra meditation, and then a double dose of Aya, and just myself for a day. And it was so transformative.
Yay.
Yeah, like I just feel like so many layers came off and so much came through. Like just, yeah, like your chakra meditation, Ananda, was truly like it just revealed so much of kind of what needs some healing and attention right now. And so I feel like it kind of helps me get clear on what I'm working on next.
Very nice. It's amazing how rarely people take true days off and how powerful they can be. So really good job to do that self-love practice and take care of yourself.
Yeah. So thank you for the recommendations.
Thanks, Steph.
I hope.
Oh.
yeah, it's like creating a container for yourself. Often I wait often for a container to be created for me to do this, but it's like, oh, how can it sounds like, Stephanie, you created a container for yourself, and that's a way of looking at it when taking this time. I'm curious about the study buddies. I know that, or accountability partners. Sorry, in my other training, we call them study buddies. You're studying together yourself. Yeah, have you connected with your accountability partners, and how was that experience? And who here hasn't yet? I'm just curious for a show of hands, connected yet? So everybody's connected. Okay, great, great. Is there anything that came up from that that would be like to be shared? We will keep connecting, because it is a way to bring this alive more in between classes, and to really share with someone that is going through the same process as you, and especially if you need accountability. Like, oh, okay, I'm struggling with this. Can we chat? And that's a way to help kind of lift each other up. Is there anything else that wants to be shared before we go into a breakout share? Yeah, Una.
Stephanie reminded me that I just wanted to shout out the plant baths in case anyone else hadn't tried that suggestion yet. So yeah, I just wanted to sing the praises of that idea, and thank you all for bringing that into this offering. It's something that I've done in the past regularly and just had lost the practice of. And it's been one of my favorite things, one of my favorite parts of this, practice. Even just the sensation of the pour over versus being under the shower is so significantly different, and shifts me into, I try to always be consciously aware and like give thanks to the water, however I'm engaging with it. But something about the pour over has really shifted that awareness for me. And then also, Kobe, thank you for suggesting that I used the actual plant that, so I'm working with Washuma, and I did blend up some of that, and I have that in a bottle in my fridge, and I do like a cold pour over of just the pure Washuma. And I don't even have words for how that feels. It's so beautiful. And it's winter where I am, so rather than try to resource other living plants, I have some really beautiful oils from Hawaii that then I'll sometimes use too. So I've been alternating between some beautiful, flower oils from Hawaii and the Washuma, and this has been my favorite part so far. So thank you for bringing that in. And if you haven't tried it yet, I encourage you to, bring that practice in. And hot cold too. The contrast therapy is one of my favorite morning practices. So.
Nice.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you, Luna. Thank you for that reminder. And I'll put it in the follow-up a few more times, just to keep reminding us that these are great practices. Oftentimes, we give a lot of practices and then we kind of lose them as we go. So I'll keep reminding us, and thank you for that reminder and inspiration.
All right, so we're going to go into breakouts and share, because everyone will be with different medicines. The sharing is, what are your learnings from your medicine so far? And sharing what medicine you have and your learnings, so that you're all kind of like starting to teach about your medicine, like, and be sort of a channel through for your medicine. And before we go into breakouts, Emily, can you show the mycelium? So Emily's growing mushrooms, and she just mentioned to me she has like a bucket of mycelium. And so I was like, I want everyone to see that, like not just your group, because it's so cool to see this connection that's going on here with growing and microdosing at the same time.
I'm not sure how clear it's going to come through the plastic tub, but
Yeah, I can imagine.
Emily, I think if you turn off your blur backgrounds,
Yeah.
it will, because it's basically only catching you. Oh, Yeah.
Oh.
There.
Yay.
I'm not sure how do I turn that off? I'm not sure.
It's okay when you pulled it back a little bit, then we were able to see it. Just pull it back by your face.
Towards
Wow, the AI filter is very good.
Yeah. Well, anyways, it's the mycelium is growing and I expect in about maybe 4 or 5 days I'm going to start seeing little pins that come up, and that's when I totally love that. So at any rate, this is substrate with grain mixed in, and the mycelium is just quite happy in there.
Happy.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Maybe I could add a little homework because I just love homework, and I just assume you guys are sitting around all week with nothing to do. So if you could, Emily, add some photos to the online forum of that process. Also, I think maybe it was at least Rena talked about her altar. I'd love photos of the altars also for inspiration in the forum. So and maybe even Luna, if you'd like to share a photo of your Washuma cactus. Yeah. We want to see a bit more of your lives, and we'll add some photos too.
And Louisa, send us a picture of your home that you're building for your daughter. The construction process. I've always been curious about that, how it's going.
Are we ready for the breakout rooms, Emily?
Yes, we are.
Okay. See you guys in
So-
15 minutes. There will be a countdown, and Emily will post any prompts in the chat.
Again, this is about your learnings from the medicine so far that you want to share with the group. Teachings.
3, 2, 1.
Can you make me co-host?
Oh yeah.
And then we can pause the recording as well.
Jump in, Rena. Stuff.
Come back. So I'm curious about any what key insights that your group spoke about that you'd like to bring to the greater group. What are some key insights? You can unmute to share. So Jonathan and then Luna.
Yep. Wachuma es muy bueno. Yeah, this is one of the things I missed last week because I was doing this foundation herbalism course, actually right across the street from Casa Kula. But one of these things we were sort of encouraged to do is, listen to the plants, and I did a plant sit with one of the Wachumas there. And I think that the lesson of, taking it into my system is pretty similar to the lesson that I get from sitting with it, which is just like, you can be still and quiet. That's just like how to be still and quiet, and that it's okay to be, because I think that a lot of the programming that we have received is that you need to be doing something.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. It's one of the
Yeah.
one of the primary reasons why I advocate to everybody, even if you're not working with Washuma, to go buy a Washuma plant and put it in a pot in your house. It has such an incredible presence without even consuming the medicine, but just sitting next to it and having it around and in your field. Also, Washuma or San Pedro cactus is legal to grow as a plant. So you can purchase it online and it can be delivered to your door. Also, a lot of greenhouses will have it available. So more homework. Please go buy a San Pedro cactus. And you can for planting instructions, you can look at like you can do it specifically for how to plant a San Pedro and get the soil blend, but it's really just a cactus blend. So very well draining soil. And you could probably buy cactus blend soils from Home Depot or also delivered to your door if you're living in the US. If you're living in Guatemala, then you go out with a shovel and you start digging. But we can take advantage of the resources that are available to us. Yeah. Wachuma es muy bueno.
I guess I'll figure out how to lower my hand after. Okay, here it is. Yeah, so Jonathan's share was a perfect segue into our group ended with the sacredness of solitude. We all were sort of chiming in about the medicine, asking us to spend some more time in quietude and even really longing for alone time in nature or in our own sacred spaces. And I felt so like validated by hearing each of the women in my group share that they were craving that. I have a lot of extroverted friends and family who worry about me when I am in these stages of sacred time. And they see it as isolating. And I think some people who don't understand the sacredness of solitude, see it as isolation or see it as a negative thing sometimes. So I just wanted to thank the other women in my breakout room who spoke up about that. It felt good to be reminded of the sacredness of solitude. And also getting quiet. I love music, so I'm always listening to music or like podcasts. I'm a clairaudient and also always getting downloads, so I distract myself, I think, sometimes with other sounds. And it's been an unconscious thing. Like I haven't even had to make the conscious effort of turning the music off. I've just been craving the silence and noticing that that's a new thing. So I think that must be coming from Washuma. So I hope.
I like that you brought that in because it is like, it's about listening. That silence can be, it's like a deep listening. And I imagine that Wachuma is like, please listen. Please listen.
And I appreciate the note of like how the community or friends or family might respond. And, we continue on our path anyway. I remember going to my silent retreats with Yogi Raj, my teacher, who left his body now about 13 years ago. But every year I'd go to Minnesota to be in these retreats, which is where my mom lives. She's like, how is it that you can come all the way back to come to Minnesota and go into the silent treatment? She called it. It's like
you're punishing her.
Yeah, you're all the way here and you're not talking to me. But 2 weeks out of my life. But yeah, I think it's really important that we choose in favor of ourselves and our needs and what it is that is important for our spiritual growth and transformation at that moment. And they'll always be there and we can always come back to our time with them in probably a new and enhanced way as a result of it.
So we'll segue into our topic today, which is creativity and play. And it's such a great way to segue because it really allowing that silence, acceptance of that, taking time alone, acceptance from the self is ultimately like what is needed, right? To really give yourself that time. And that's where creativity will flourish. And so we have a video by a great comedian that he shares his view of what creativity is. Can you hear this? No? You can't hear it. Okay, I'm going to try something different. One moment.
Don't worry, we're in good hands. Emily is a Zoom ninja.
Really is.
Clearly, not clearly, clearly sometimes.
Most of the time. I was just noticing, just a side note, that the groups that we put together, which is random that the computer did it, but Chad, Jonathan, Rena, and Steph were all in one group, and you guys are all therapists of some sort.
Oh,
Interesting.
that's cheating.
Very interesting. Okay, here we go.
Computer, it knows.
Are you watching the video, Emily?
Because we're not.
We're just watching you watch the video.
What's going on? What's going on?
Maybe.
Do you want to share screen it?
Why don't we jump in and we can work on that later? It'll be a
All right.
prize at the end. Or
I
I
think
could
it's a
reenact
change in
please.
change in the Zoom settings. Really, really what he's saying, and we'll bring it in because it is great, is, that there's a quote by Alan Watts that he mentions is you can't be spontaneous within reason. And, it's if we're in that prefrontal lobe all the time, that frontal lobe, then it's, the more the area where we're learning and maybe where there be more judgments and assessments and organized brain, and we can slightly move from that. And that's where the spontaneity is. And that it's creating these moments to open up possibility that anything can happen. One of my favorite lines in Spanish is todo es posible. And it is sort of inviting in that possibility that anything is possible. And there's a way, with creativity, there's a way of bringing in like a childlike view of that anything is possible. And that's where there's that slight shift of going from reason to spontaneity is through that way. And then, of course, there's things that can happen that can come against that, and we'll go into that. But I would say, what is one of the first things, the first word that comes to mind when you think of creativity? So I'd love to hear that in the chat. When you think of creativity, what is one word or what is one essence that comes to mind for you? Yeah, fun, dance, openness, play. Welcome, Roxanne, welcome. Great to see you. Laughter. Boundless. This all reminds me of that innocence of a child, actually, as these are being shared in the chat. So it's like one thought away, or one moment away from, being in more of that, okay, I'm more of an organized human, to one thought or one breath away to get into that place of joy, of exploration, of laughter, of dance, of fun. And so it's, as everything is, it's through intention that we can start to come into those moments that you've just placed in the chat.
And I love that one of the things that comes from the video that we didn't see, but you very eloquently recreated is this idea of spontaneity without or within reason. It's like we can't be spontaneous if we're in the reasonable mind. And one of our friends, Laura Dawn, she does a lot of work with creativity, and part of her work has been in her PhD is a lot of research with creative thinkers. And she's proposed several different types of definitions that all kind of revolve around this idea of letting go of the reasonable mind. And one of the definitions that she shares is the ability to modify self-imposed constraints. So that in itself is opening up that place of creativity or a different way of thinking. Another one is that it's the generation of ideas or solutions that are novel and original and that are useful in solving the problem at hand. So it's kind of directing our attention toward the problem, but through this idea of non-constraining or non-self-imposing. And then another one I really like is it's the defeat of habit by originality. And so we're looking at the ways in which we ourselves can find new ideas, new generative ways of thinking, and that being the way that we'll start to defeat habit. And then the last one that I think is her own personal statement is the process of translating our ideas and inner visions into tangible reality. And so this is kind of what we're going to get into when we start to talk about the use of creativity. So we're going to go into a bit about, why creativity and some of the aspects of it, but then ultimately we want to be able to translate that into a way in which we're living our day-to-day life and how we're able to utilize that for our inner visions or our manifestations. And so when we think about kind of why we're creating or why we're even investing energy into developing creativity, I think about this as kind of twofold. I guess one is maybe they're both active and I think that they're both valid, but one might be more of an old paradigm, which is kind of like this idea of creativity is to come up with something, to come up with music or art or a play or a sculpture or painting or something that is an expression of yourself. And in this new paradigm, I feel that there's an opportunity to recognize that if we're all creative, part of creativity is just in being alive. It's about finding what's already woven in the fabric of us, in the fabric of our own DNA, and then expressing that in an inherently creative way. And so it feels kind of like a yes and, which is something we say in our Kula a lot, which means that, this can be something that looks different for everyone. For one person, it might be that going out in nature and painting landscapes of nature is the way in which they are able to express themselves, but it's not about it being out there for anyone or anything. It's about expressing something from within and letting it take form in the way that it's meant to come out. And also with that is that we are naturally creative. So it's not that, so if we're looking at it as different for everyone, we don't need to compare ourselves to how we are creative, but it's more about looking at it that it's not about if we're creative, it's that we are each creative and in our own way. And how can that come from the inside out? And so creativity is really about an innovative process. And it's a way in which we contribute, to the whole, but we're not doing it for, it's kind of interesting. Jaya, one of our dear friends, he always says, we're doing this art for ourselves. And if our passion is also to be supportive in helping the world in healing and transformation, then ultimately what we are bringing forth from our own self and our own healing is by nature going to be healing for others. And so we are still doing it for ourselves because it's fulfilling to our own purpose. And so one of the reasons I think that can be associated with creativity is that we are creating or developing or setting forth a legacy of our work. And it doesn't have to be, again, something that means it's out there for somebody else. Our work is the actual creation of it. And Emily will talk a little bit about some of the work of Rick Rubin, who goes into that a bit deeper. But I just want to mention that I think that this is really about, a practice of discovering the way in which we are creative. It's not about the creativity practice itself. It's about discovering the way in which we are creative. And so if we are created to reflect the creator or nature or the essence of all that is, then when that fades, it's like all that remains is still this essence of the creator or the creation. And so I feel that the word or this world of creativity is something that we're not separate from, but we are part of, and that's the place from which we build. And I don't know that I said that very clearly, but I've got Jaya in my brain, and he's really a creative poet, and the way that he speaks of this, I think, is really unparalleled. But one of the things that he did tell me is that the creativity has to come out of what he called boredom. And he said it's like you have to create a place that is relaxed and lazy in order to create, in order to become creative. He said it almost has to be selfish, and that is where the magic comes, and that's where the best form of art is created. But that boredom has to be prioritized. So we have to create space for that. And that's a question, I guess, to ask, for any of you, if there's a place that you're able to draw that creativity from, if there's like a way that you create your space for creativity to come through. And if not, if you've been able to identify if there's any blocks to that creativity. So maybe we can put that in the chat quickly. What are some blocks to your creativity, or where does your creativity stem from? Both of those things. And I guess I'll just answer quickly first, because I've been thinking about this myself, and that is that my creativity stems from solitude. And I love that that was brought up from both groups, really. The most creative I am is when I'm in dieta, and when I'm away from people, phones, conversations, just regular thoughts and processes. And so that is where I write music. I write all my songs usually during those 10 days for the whole year. And the places that I find that I am blocked would be when I feel like there's pressure to have to do it. That blocks me. When I feel like I'm supposed to, or I should, or I need to get it in right now, then I don't feel the freedom, and it doesn't come naturally. So great. I see that trying to have some kind of a goal is a block as well. Yep. Self-doubt or self-consciousness. Comparing yourself to others is another block. Yep. Being too busy, that comes up a lot. Does anyone have the fear of making a mistake, maybe, or not doing it right? Yeah, Emily. Being a bit tired is often a way into creative force. Yes, agreed. That's, I think, what Jaya was getting to too, with the, you kind of have to get into that state of laziness. Distraction. Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about that too, Rena. Thank you for that one. Not doing it right. Yeah, Roxanne. There's a quote actually about distraction that is this guy, Robin Sharma, that I've been listening to. Oh, it's in here. Good. It says addiction to distraction is the death of creative production. Addiction to distraction is the death of creative production.
Which, by the way, sounds exactly like our society, that we're addicted to distraction, and in large part because of these super entertaining little devices. There once upon a time when we'd go poop, we would just sit there and poop. That's it. When we'd go to a bank, we would just stand in line and just stare off into nothingness. And now if you ever go into a bank or in any type of line of any kind, you look around and every single person, I'm sure you've all noticed, is looking at their phone. So it's like the society has taken away these opportunities for boredom, which means now we have to like intentionally implement boredom on ourselves to get into these creative spaces.
Totally. So before we break, just to complete that line of questioning, I guess, is there anyone who feels really like clearly connected to their creativity and would like to share either in the chat or verbally their process as to how you might have moved through some blocks and how you do feel that creativity moves through you easily?
I would just like to say that I have a hard time calling myself an artist, but I am an artist, and I find that I the whole thing about not doing it right and comparing certainly a big presence for me, but also it's kind of just like it's just like meditating and exercise and other things. Practice.
Mhm.
I mean, practice is really important. So just do it, whatever it is that your avenue. It may not, you may not like the outcome on a particular day, but practice, practice, practice.
Oh,
Mm.
thank you for that. And I love that you said you're an artist, that you reframed that and caught it. Yes. I remember in our dieta, we were all playing music, and at the end of one of our sessions, we're like, we're musicians. And it was just like, yes. And now ever since then, we've been holding it. And it's like, we are musicians. And it really changes the, this like holding it's like a responsibility. Like, yes, this is my work. This is something that I'm dedicating and devoting my time to. So I'm going to practice because it's part of who I am and what I do now.
Should take a little break.
Yeah. Okay.
I like this connecting to the heart, Chad. Connecting to the heart. That's so big. Bringing it down from the mind into the heart and moving from that space. Yeah.
Comes from the hands, expresses in a creative way. Got it. Because it's from the heart. Yeah.
The heart meridians.
Yes.
I love that, like working with the hands from the heart through the heart meridians going down the arms. It's a nice visual.
Beautiful. Just got it. All right. Well, let's take a quick PT. So we'll come back in 5 minutes, which would be 21. 21
Yeah,
after the
21.
hour. Yeah. PNT. Do them both if you can.
And it's not about the destination or what you're working on, but the process of it and not looking at the outcome. So being in love with the process and finding that fulfillment within the process of creativity, which helps to get really clear as to what brings us joy. What are we excited about taking the time to work with? And part of that is that part of the process is also connecting back to those innocent eyes and about curiosity and asking questions. Asking questions opens up possibilities versus saying statements. And so when it's like, how might I, what could happen if, and especially in solving any problems and using a creative process to solve problems. Einstein said once that if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend the first 55 minutes finding the right question, because then in 5 minutes I could solve the problem. And it's like this idea of inviting more curiosity and questions into the process. And so he has Rick Rubin, and we have this in the circle. He has a creative process or phases of creativity that he worked with. And he's, a great producer in a music studio and produced, the Beastie Boys and Red Hot Chili Peppers and Metallica and tons of other like amazing albums. And so his process, if you can imagine, is working in a music studio. And so there's what, he calls this process that there's 4 phases. So the first phase is the seed, which is collecting as many ideas as possible. And you've probably heard in this journey, we've used the term lunar thinking. So lunar is more flowing. It is more moon energy, more the energy of infinite possibility. And it is getting sort of all of those ideas and collecting all those ideas of words, of shapes, of melodic phrases. Like he was speaking in terms of music, the groove. And then once you have all of those laid out, then it's actually, before even going through and assessing, it is about experimentation. So experimenting with this, and this is where the play comes in, where it's experimenting with all these possibilities that might be seemingly not possible from a solar or like a doing mind state, but that it's like, let's just try this for the sake of trying it. So inviting that in. So there's this experimentation. And then as you're experimenting, then it becomes more clear what the third phase is, which is craft, which is quite like honing in on what it is that wants to be born through this, this seeds code. Like the seed is all the ideas, and then it's cracked. And then something is clearly born through it. And this is what we term as solar thinking, which is more the masculine focused. Okay, now we know which thread we're going to work with. And then from there, as you're working and bringing the self through to the completion of what it is, this creative project, it's the idea of refinement and completion and letting go of what, like how the world perceives it, but completing in a way that feels good for you, and then letting it go. So he would create these great albums, and then they would be released, but that was the end of his process, was right there. It's like the album is done, and then of course the world takes it and receives it. And so it's an interesting process that he outlines in this book. And so we've got that in the academy, or in the circle for you, because it's something that even if you create a container for yourself when you're spending some time to maybe imagine or think of what these processes are, so that there's a container that can happen through it.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. I know those terms, lunar and solar, kind of were presented to us from our friend Zach, and he was instrumental in the creation of the Kula Collective, our yoga school, which was this period of time with very, very intense creativity, where we were really creating a whole new organization with a whole new curriculum, and there was a lot that went into it. And one of the things that was most valuable about Zach's participation was that he would do a lot of work to keep us in the lunar part of the process, kind of the seed and the experimentation, as Rick Rubin called it. And the other 6 people in the room would immediately want to go to the problem solving. We would immediately start judging ideas as they came up as realistic or not realistic. And Zach again and again and again would say, "Hey, well, let's stay lunar, let's stay lunar." I mean, it's basically all Zach said for the first year was, "Let's stay lunar, let's stay lunar, let's stay lunar."
Don't solar my lunar, I
Don't
would say.
which really means just staying in that infinite possibility place where we're not really judging or analyzing the ideas. We're just throwing ideas out and experimenting with mixing them up and shaking them up and seeing what happens. And so I thought it was interesting observing our tendency to go solar, observing our tendency to want to judge everything as it's coming out, and how important it was to stay out of that place of judgment and just flow and release and create and be in that lunar infinite possibility space. There was a really interesting podcast I listened to from Malcolm Gladwell called Revisionist History, and it was also about creativity, and he was talking about how there tends to be 2 different creative processes depending on who you are, and it's not that one is right and the other is wrong. It just is interesting to observe these 2 different ways, even to experiment with the 2 different ways. And he used Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen as the examples of the 2 different ways. Bob Dylan was famous for many things, but one of the things he was famous for was his ability to just channel. to just open up the channel, the portal, and just release poetry and art and creativity. And he would do very, very little revision. He just believed in the channel. He would open up, and whatever flowed out, obviously with some revision, but with very little revision, would be what he would release to the world. And then Leonard Cohen, on the other side of the spectrum, says he took something like 7 years to feel complete with the song Hallelujah. And he wrote hundreds of verses before he finally whittled it down to the 12 that he ended up using in the final song. So I think it's mostly interesting to just know about these two different ways of going about our art and our creativity, as a way of exploring the other. You know, if you are somebody who just writes and releases, maybe try going back and revising and editing and seeing what happens if you put a little bit more revision into your art. And if you tend to be more like the Leonard Cohen side of the spectrum, where you whittle and craft and revise over and over and over and over again, maybe try doing some practices which are more about just free flow expression. Also, one more little anecdote that I wanted to share before my allotted time is up. Ananda, we and I were in a retreat probably about 10 years ago, and one of the assignments was to do something creative, you know, in your time off, in your break. And Ananda decided to use that time to write a song, and she had never written a song before. And because it was an assignment, you know, and she's an A+ student, she really made sure to go do the work and get the work done and write the song. And it was the first song she ever wrote, but it unleashed it opened up the floodgates of creativity for her, where she has really not stopped writing music since then. So I bring that up just because there's opportunities during this course to kind of explore your creativity and do some different creativity assignments, and you never know what's going to happen. You know, sometimes a little bit of a push can unleash that flood. So just a bit of encouragement to spend and invest a little bit of time on your creative process in these weeks, especially while we're working with these medicines and held in this container, out of curiosity to see what happens, because it might be amazing. You might end up with volumes and volumes and volumes of songbooks to come out of it.
Or poetry or art. Or...
Yeah. Any medium.
So a way to understand how you're interacting with creativity is through understanding your brain. And I find the brain a very fascinating thing. And how we can shift brainwave states to move into sort of away from sort of our regular, very focused attention, which is where we're probably all at right now, which is more the more of a beta state, and even moving. So from that beta state, we can exist like now in a learning environment, and then recognizing too that when we get into high beta, that's more of like a stressful state. So it's really hard to feel creative in high beta. And so imagine like trying to be creative in feeling when you're feeling stressed is not really possible. So recognizing that, and that as you do, you can do different activities to bring yourself to shift your brainwave states, which is ultimately releasing different chemicals in your brain so that you go from that beta, like very focused attention state, to alpha, which is a more relaxed state and can enter into more of a flow state, and into theta, which even goes deeper, and towards delta, which is considered deep sleep, but also can be can access a very high creative space there. And also gamma, which is like kind of where transcendental states happen. So recognizing that there's different chemicals being released in the brain that evoke these different openings. And so psychedelics and cognition, we can start to relate them to them because the psychedelics help us to move through these different brainwave states. And they also facilitate a mode of cognition called unconstrained cognition. And this is where your brain goes more into thought processes that are free-flowing and non-linear and less restricted by conventional patterns, like patterns of reasoning or logic or what we know about the past or the society. So if we can bring our brain into an unconstrained cognition, then this is where intuition comes through, creativity, altered states of consciousness, and that's where inspiration arises as well. And so some of you might have heard of the term default mode network, which is really our very rational mind, that psychedelics, there's a temporary reducing of the activity in the default mode network, which then can help to evoke introspection or daydreaming or restfulness, or like in a higher dose journey, access to new ways of thinking. So it's like new neural pathways can come together, which is so interesting. And that's why working with psychedelics, both as in the over longer periods of time, microdosing can assist with this, or in a larger dose ceremony, that's why it's suggested in the days after. You've got sort of a open mind, a more malleable, a more neuroplastic. Your mind is has more neural plasticity, so that there can be a way to rewire or create new activity, like new thoughts. Even this is where you can install new beliefs as well. But this is also a place that I imagine to be very clean slate to create from. And that it's that creativity that this is why we can really bring that in with psychedelics. And of course, other things too. But right now we're sort of understanding how psychedelics can help us with the creativity. So ultimately, thinking of a psychedelic as a pattern disruptor. So it's jolting the brain out of default patterns to create new. So if there's ever a feeling of like, oh, I don't know if I'm creative, well, that you can go into a journey or have an intention one day with your microdose to open up to open up into that. And this, when we become more malleable, like we increase the neuroplasticity, then this also helps to change ingrained patterns in the body and the mind. So it helps us to overall shift.
Yeah, I know one of the nice scientific studies that was done about it was psilocybin mushrooms. The setup was they would present a problem, and then the participants would write as many different solutions as they could think of to that problem. And what the survey or the scientists were evaluating wasn't how good their solutions were, just the total number of solutions. And the people who were on even the microdose of psilocybin mushrooms would have substantially more solutions to the challenge than those that didn't. And I think one of the definitions of creativity was something that had something very similar to do with that. Creativity, the generation of ideas, insights, or solutions that are both novel, original, and useful in solving the problem at hand. So just by that definition, it was indicating that even being on a microdose of psilocybin mushrooms, it means that our creativity is enhanced. We don't have as much research around ayahuasca and washuma, but presumably it would be something similar. just meaning that our minds are a bit more open right now to come up with creative ideas and solutions. So to take advantage of this opportunity and time.
And interestingly enough, like a lot of the tech companies in Silicon Valley, they've been working with microdosing psilocybin for a long time to evoke creativity in their workspace. So it's definitely something that's very, very real.
Mhm. And the fact that we're microdosing, I feel like we really do have a great opportunity to experience this over a longer period of time. Often when we come out of a journey, a psychedelic journey, it's like, boom, we're, flooded with creativity. And so we have that kind of short period of time to capture that information and to somehow be creative with it. And I feel like over this extended period with microdosing, it's really about refining this awareness to, that creativity and how we're tapping into it regularly. So last week when we were talking about awareness, I feel like that really leads us into this place of having awareness around us of everything and how we see, how we feel, how we take in, how we embody everything, and letting that be a part of how we are engaging in our creative process. The medicine path in general, I feel, is really about refining this awareness and paying attention to what we are paying attention to, which is something my teacher Yogi Raj used to say. And I feel like that means really looking at the spaces between, like looking at what we're paying attention to, finding what those patterns are, and seeing if we can start to shift to maybe a new path or a new way of navigating. Because once we start, as Emily was saying, we have these neural pathways in our mind. Once we start down those neural pathways and we keep continuing down those same pathways, we just deepen that groove, and it becomes a little bit harder then to step out of it. But what it requires, and I think what microdosing and some of these plant medicines allow for, is more curiosity, more openness to something that could be new, to new experiences. And a lot of the creativity thinkers refer to this as openness to new experiences, that is a lot of what creativity is about. And specifically, I think when we're working with these medicines that are visionary, like both ayahuasca and washuma and mushrooms, they all create opportunities for visionary capacity that feels and seems as though it is beyond our everyday thinking mind. And so when we can start to utilize these visionary medicines to engage our imagination, it will help us to start to like untether ourselves a bit from what we are currently considering to be our narratives, or the way in which we might be tightly held to some of our belief systems. And so it just starts to open up the potential for new thoughts and new ideas. And it supports this imaginary process or imagination process, which is different than our teacher Dodie. She often talks about that there's this imagination, and then there's visioning. And the imagination is something that we actually have to start to stimulate within ourselves. Once we stimulate imagination through the mind, then visioning comes from spirit. So we're looking to get to that place of the visionary aspect of these medicines, where we're allowing ourselves to see something different, or to see new realities, to see what the unconscious mind has access to, or the subconscious mind has access to. And so we're really exploring this dance while we're in this medicine work of the seen and the unseen, and kind of straddling these spaces of this ordinary realm and the non-ordinary realm. And part of our work, because we are microdosing and we're in this every day, is to be able to straddle them both, and to be able to navigate in our daily life in a place where we're also allowing that imagination and visionary capacity to open up and to influence the way in which we're living. And so hopefully we're going to be kind of expanding beyond the normal way or of our conventional reality by engaging with these greater concepts or greater idea spaces. And the medicine journey, I think, is a place that we start to spark our own creativity. And it's the place where we start to open up and to start to let go a little bit of some of those old patterns so that we can be a bit more spontaneous in our lives. And when we have started to look at our awareness and our embodiment already, hopefully this has started to give us places that we can see where we are grooved, where we're engaged in a particular kind of groove that might be a pattern that is not necessarily supportive to us. And so maybe we're starting to look at new ways of speaking to ourselves or new ways of looking at ourselves. And this is now again an opportunity to set the stage for something different to see, something more spontaneous. And so our psychedelic work is offering that. It offers a new perspective. And so creativity, I think if we want to think of it in the primary ways that we're moving toward that place of visionary, is we have to be curious. And with that curiosity, then we need to develop or engage in the courage to start to express it. And so giving ourselves permission this week to be curious with that continued awareness, seeing what we see, noticing what we notice, paying attention to what we pay attention to, and then taking the next step to develop the courage to step into the unseen, to start to engage with the non-ordinary realm. And let those feelings, when you start to feel just a simple pull or a tug in one direction, let yourself move and follow it and see where it turns into a spark of creativity for you. It may be something that you're just not even aware is available to you until you stumble upon it. So opening up to those possibilities and recognizing that the medicines are inviting us to do this work. The medicines invite us to think bigger. And when I think of this, I think about how in this work that we're doing in our practice of microdosing, we're actually asking ourselves to change our perception of reality, which means that the medicines are asking us to become something greater, something bigger. And if we start to engage in that and follow that, it will cultivate something bigger within ourselves, which then ultimately means that we're cultivating something bigger in service to the planet, in service to others, in service to this world, in service to humanity. And that is what really is encouraging us to help others expand then in their capacity to think in an expanded way as well. So hopefully we can do our work this week and ongoing to start to see how we can bring these medicines into our lives in a way that open us up to new perceptions and new ways of thinking, and ultimately recognizing that that is going to support the world, the earth, and humanity in doing the same. So we've got some work to do.
Can I talk about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
So we've got some work to do. Thank you, Ananda. Which starts with pooping. Bet you didn't see that one coming. I'm trying to work on the connection between creativity and pooping, but
Didn't happen.
I'm trying to be creative in that we need to clear out the plumbing before we can tap into higher realms. So the cleanse that I would like to offer this week has to do with really a deep colon cleanse. The colon is this incredible channel in our body connecting our mouth to our bum that in some ways is actually outside of us. We think of it as inside our body, but it's actually we're more shaped like a donut or a torus, and the hole in the donut is that mouth to anus tube. And that mouth to anus tube is really, if you look back in our genetic history, if we go all the way back, once upon a time we were just this tubular worm, and we're talking a long time ago. And this tubular worm, all it really had was a mouth and an anus, and that's all it was. It would just wiggle around, and food would come in one side and poop would come out the back. That's it. That still exists in our body. We've just added all this flesh and this big brain and all these limbs to that worm that still exists. And it's super, super, super important to clean this worm out, because that's how the stuff we put into our body gets absorbed into our body. So it's important when we're starting to do any type of cleansing protocol to start by cleaning out the colon. Dieta food is nice for cleaning the colon because it's so simple and clean, but it can create some stagnancy because it's not always so high fiber. I did recommend for if you do dieta, really make sure to focus on the leafy greens to keep your fiber intake up. But fiber is one of the real key parts of keeping the colon super healthy. So I'd like to think of fiber as, you know, big bowls of salad, but any raw fruits and vegetables and whole grains are going to have really nice fiber, both soluble and insoluble, to help our body. Soluble fiber, by the way, does break down in our body and in water and feeds our microbiome. So it's really good for our gut bacteria, whereas an insoluble fiber doesn't break down. And that's really like the broom that just keeps everything moving, keeps things flowing. So in terms of colon cleansing, perhaps the most important thing first is just having a really good diet. So that we're not really creating too much contamination in the first place. And when we talk about a really good diet, that is usually just, you know, plant-based, whole foods. I really like Michael Pollan's 3 statements of eat food, mostly plants, and not too much. This is the most simple way to have good nutrition in our life. He elaborates to say when he says eat food, he's talking about real food, not you know, canned food, not processed food, not fast food, but real food. Not too much. He also says not too little, but most people get in trouble when, in our society at least, when we start eating too much. If you know that you tend towards the other side and can be a bit deficient, then it also means not too little. So a good amount of food. And then mostly plants. You know, there's nothing wrong with some animal product, but if we really focus on plants, that means we're going to have a lot of fiber in our body, a lot of good nutrients, and it'll keep our colon clean and strong. And then the other thing I'd like to add into our probiotics.
What happened? And they're back. Can you unmute?
Oh, back. That was the most stressful 30 seconds of my life. So happy to be back with you all. So yeah, Michael Pollan's 3 thoughts on nutrition. And then the 4th one that I'd like to add, it would be probiotic foods. There was a time when we ate not as clean in terms of the workspace, and we would be exposing our bodies and our gut to a lot more bacteria. With the advent of antibacterial soaps, we have super clean surfaces, and we're super neurotic about keeping everything clean, which means that our guts aren't as exposed to as much bacteria. Also, when we used to, you know, be a little bit more of a wandering tribes, our food would naturally ferment, and we wouldn't necessarily throw it out because nutrients were so important. So to continue that practice of fermentation and consuming ferments, I think is super important. So this is things like sauerkraut and kimchi, kombucha and jun and yogurts. Anything that's fermented is in the right moderate dose is really, really good for our guts. So keeping a really nice clean diet, adding a lot of probiotics, and then occasionally doing some colon cleansing. The 2 colon cleanses that I put into school for this week that we can try is juice cleansing. So doing a juice fast. I recommended up to 3 days. The one thing about juice fasting that is important to keep in mind is that one thing that often will happen with juice fasts is people will consume tons of sugar because they're juicing the juiced carrots, beets, and fruits, and all of those contain tons and tons and tons of sugar. So if you're juice fasting, which I think is a great cleanse, just be aware of that and try to put more, you know, cucumbers and leafy greens and things that are not so full in sugar. If like you're tasting that juice and it's just so sweet, you know, see if you can bring down the sweetness level. by adding a bit more vegetables. And when I say vegetables, I don't mean root vegetables, because root vegetables tend to be really high in sugar. The other thing is Shankala Prakshalana. So this I put into school, Shanka Prakshalana, sorry. This is a saltwater cleanse from the yogic and Ayurvedic tradition. And I've put a really good protocol. I tried to make it.
Can you turn your video off?
Turn the video off. Stop.
Yeah, that'll be better.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Great. So I put the protocol into school, so I don't need to talk too much about it, but Shanka Prakshalana is this amazing saltwater flush where you drink salt water and you do yogic postures, and then you poop out the salt water, and then you drink some more salt water, and you do some more yogic practices, and then you poop out some more salt water, and you keep doing this for up to 5 liters of water until your poop starts coming out crystal clear. So it's like a full body enema. From your mouth down to the anus, it clears everything out. It's kind of like the old-fashioned way of doing a colonic. But I feel like it's the more natural way of doing a colonic, starting with going from mouth to anus instead of shoving the water up the bum. So that's detailed really well in the circle. So I really recommend that you try it out if you can find some time. The only other thing I have to add, I'm not sure if you guys can even hear me because you're all frozen, fingers crossed, is that after the cleanse, which only takes about an hour, make sure you leave yourself a good 2 hours before you have anything to do, because it can be very, very exhausting to do this type of colon cleanse. It's a very deep cleanse. And on an energetic level, it can leave you really depleted. So it's usually done very early, first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, which, you do it for 1 hour and then a good 2-hour rest, which is also a really nice time where our mind will oftentimes be very spacious. So happy cleansing. We want to hear all the details of how it goes for those who have the courage to do it. Also, if this isn't the right week for Shanka Prakshalana, just know that the protocol's in there. Maybe this is a better week for some dieta food, or maybe you don't have time for any of this, and it's time to just sit with a crystal in your hand and work on your hucha. So any of the cleanses are available and open to you. Most importantly, though, is to let us know all of the juicy details.
Thank you, Kobe. Thank you.
Kobe,
So
can I
go
ask
ahead.
a question?
Yeah.
You said natural salt. Is that like sea salt or like Himalayan salt or?
Yeah, either of those would work. Sea salt, especially. Apparently, it's really great to get sea salt from salt flats as opposed to from the ocean. But anything that's not iodized, that's the only real big caveat, is the best source of salt you can get that's not iodized. The salt I just got is from the salt flat in Utah. I know Himalayan sea salt's great. I know they have nice salts in South America from Peru. But yeah, any good salt that's not iodized.
And one other thing that will be in circle. So all of this is in circle. The cleansing that Kobe just mentioned. And there's also some breathwork sessions that are guided breathwork sessions. And breathwork is also a great way of cleaning and cleansing and detoxifying, because a lot of it leads through our lungs. A lot of toxins leave through the lungs. So there's also, if one of those physical practices doesn't work, there's a 30-minute and 60-minute breath work, conscious connected breath work session, and there's information in there. Plus the follow-up, which is all the practices that you've been hearing us sharing and talking about. So definitely go into Circle and check it out. There's a great amount of content as well based on what we've talked about today, so you can review that.
Yeah, and speaking of the follow-up part, we need about 24 hours before we'll be done, and I'll make a comment in the forum before that's fully finished. But Ananda will also be sharing a journey this week about
to the carnival of your imagination.
Wow, to the carnival of your imagination. So we'll post about it in the forum when the follow-up article is complete.
And there's a lot of good just notes in the class notes section about ways that you can start to work with your creativity and things as follow-up to our conversation today, and just making sure to really honor the medicine in the process and start to work with and dialogue with the medicine as to how it is that you are ready to level up in this capacity of your life. Yeah. Sound good? Creativity and play. Let's go.
I would love to see that, an expression of what creativity and play is just in this moment. Could be a facial or physical expression. 1, 2, 3, go. Yeah.
Same. I love it.
Have a beautiful week, everyone.
Yeah.
On that note, sending all the love.
Thank you guys.
Mm,
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Happy level upping. Oh.
Oh.
Look at Chad's dog.